Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an IFBB pro. Today's guest is Brandon Williams. Brandon, welcome to the podcast.
Happy to be here.
Cool. So, Brandon, I've got a couple questions I like to ask all of my guests. So the first question I have for you is, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
I would probably say my top would be Lee Priest. I'm a smaller guy, so he's one of the OGs in the small category, and he was just one of the great bodybuilders, I think.
Anybody else, or are there any current guys that you look up to or respect?
I like Terrence Ruff Diesel. I like him a whole lot. Again, he's kind of a smaller guy. Has a real pleasing classic build, nice lines, nice full muscle bellies. I really like his look. And then with my age, the era that I grew up, obviously Arnold was big then. So I was big into Arnold, watching all the Arnold movies, just probably about like anybody that grew up in the 80s era.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Okay. Why don't you let us know, Brandon, at what age you started lifting weights, and why did you start lifting weights at that age? And we're going to get into all the bodybuilding stuff, so don't kind of go into your bodybuilding story, but just when did you start picking up the weights and kind of fall in love with weight training?
So when I was probably around 13 years old, I was a big basketball player, believe it or not. I'm a short guy, but I was big into basketball. I was a good athlete coming up through high school. I played a lot of sports, but basketball was kind of my favorite thing. And our coach required us to put so many hours into the gym as part of the basketball program. So whenever I started going into the gym, I started to see results pretty quickly, which anytime you see results, especially in the gym like that makes you enjoy it more. So with what little time he was requiring us to put in the gym and me seeing results, that was making it more enjoyable for me. And that's kind of what sparked my interest in being in the gym.
Cool. Awesome. Now that's a little, it's maybe a little bit more common currently or within the last maybe 5 to 10 years, but when you and I were growing up, especially with basketball, the weight training was something that I think a lot of more old school coaches said, hey, stay away from the weights or don't lift too much because it's going to hinder your basketball. Is more of a football focus activity. So do you feel like your basketball coach was maybe a little bit of ahead of his time in terms of getting you guys into the weight room as basketball athletes?
Oh, I do, for sure. Our basketball coach played pro overseas. So when he came here, I grew up in a little bitty town. It's about 30 miles northwest of Nashville, Tennessee. It's in Cheatham County, and it was called Sycamore High School, is where I went to school. But anyway, the coach there, again, played professional ball overseas, and he was a bigger guy, and he was familiar with how, I guess, you got beat up more so at that level, kind of like the Michael Jordan era to the era that it is now. Michael Jordan back in that era got pounded in ball. But anyway, so our coach just made sure that when we were on the floor, we weren't going to get manhandled by any other team. So he just required us to put so many hours in. And again, I enjoyed being in there, started seeing the results. So and that just kind of sparked my interest into keeping it going, keep lifting.
Excellent. Love that, Brandon. Okay. Now you mentioned growing up in Tennessee just a quick minute ago, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about your childhood and your upbringing? So Tennessee, you played a lot of sports. You mentioned basketball is kind of your favorite. What other sports did you play? What was life like for you when you were younger up to about high school, Brandon?
Growing up, I had a really, really good childhood. I live in the country. I'm a big hunter. I'm a big fisherman. My family raised tobacco. So growing up, I worked in the tobacco patch a lot, was in the tobacco barn. Um, my parents were great parents. I couldn't have asked for any better. We would go on, a couple of vacations a year, family vacations. And my dad was a women's basketball coach. He was a PE teacher and the women's basketball coach. And so he told me that at a very young age, Brandon, you're going to be small. So if you want to end up playing basketball, you're going to have to be able to jump. You're going to have to be quick, fast. You're going to have some advantages that these other kids aren't going to have because you're going to have a disadvantage of being small. So he pushed and pushed and pushed to get me to work on my plyometrics to get to, where I could jump, work on my quickness. I played football for 9 years, and there was one game in the 9 years that I didn't have a touchdown, and I was really proud of that. I was running about a 4.4, 4.5 40, so I was quick, and with my dad pushing me to work on my vertical and working on my jumping and everything. By around my junior year, I was dunking. And with me being 5'5", that was pretty unheard of. So I feel like that I owe a lot of that to my dad. But again, I'm very competitive, and I like a challenge. So with me being the smaller person, I feel like that just kind of helped push me to work a little bit harder, maybe more so than the other guys that were taller, because I did have to work harder. But growing up, my childhood was great. I couldn't ask for any better. I never went without. My parents always made sure I had everything I needed. My parents are still together, still around to this day, and we're on a road that it's kind of my whole family own this road. I live on a road called Mount Zion Road, and when you're on our road, it's my house, my uncle's house, my brother's house, my grandmother's house, my parents' house. We're all on one side, and then on the other side of the road, it's cousins. So it's been real nice just to be around family pretty much my whole life. I haven't left. I haven't gone anywhere. I've lived in this area my whole life. So it's been great. I'm just a country boy. Grew up hunting and fishing. Um, I put my pants on just like anybody else does. And I go to work. I'm a firefighter, so go to work every day, just like anybody else does. And that's that.
Okay. Now, did you have any siblings, or were you an only child, Brandon?
I do have an older brother, and he is about as far opposite of me as you can get. He's pretty much just strictly a farmer. He doesn't care anything about sports. He doesn't care anything about bodybuilding. He's just good with being a country boy, raising tobacco, wearing overalls and boots, and I mean that's him. He's happy, and that's what he enjoys.
Cool, cool, love it. I could say the same. I have a younger brother, and he's a redhead, and starting at that point and about every other point you could cross, we're different. But it's interesting how two individuals can grow up with the same parents in the same environment and be completely opposite, right? It's
That's
very
right.
interesting. It fascinates me.
That's exactly right, and that sounds just exactly like us. Grew up in the same household, same parents, but we couldn't be more far apart than
Right.
than two people.
Now, do you feel like because you were smaller and shorter growing up, Brandon, did you have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder at any point? Did you get made fun of? Did that have any negatives brought into your life because of your height and because you were a little bit smaller, or did you kind of overcompensate for that in terms of being an athlete and being a really good athlete?
Yes, the being a good athlete definitely helped for me. I mean, there was a couple of other smaller kids, that I grew up with that got kind of picked on and bullied. I feel like it went on a whole lot back then, but it wasn't. I guess it's talked about or as frowned upon as much as it is in in this era now. But with me being an athlete, again, I was good at everything I played. Um, I really didn't, I got the respect from being the athlete rather than it didn't matter that I was small and short. I was a great athlete and I was good at everything. Everybody liked me, so it was that definitely helped as far as the bulliness and all that kind of stuff goes. But I definitely was smaller growing up, and I have been my whole life. But I'm used to it, and I kind of feel like that it's driven me to maybe push a little bit harder or work a little bit harder than maybe somebody else would that has in basketball I feel like I might have worked a little bit harder than somebody that was taller. And then in football I felt like I might have worked a little harder than somebody that was bigger and more muscular and more developed than I was at that age. And I played baseball, and stuff too. So I was familiar with all of the sports. And I was blessed with athleticism as far as that goes. Definitely small, but as far as being an athlete, I could pick up anything almost and run with it.
Cool. Awesome. Now, was there anything in your childhood or your younger years, up to about high school, Brandon, that maybe wasn't positive, or maybe something that was kind of like a negative, or anything that you feel like looking back is like, okay, in the moment that was tough or that was bad, but it made me better. Anything like that, or was everything pretty pristine for you as a young person?
Well, I tore my ACL twice in my left knee.
Okay.
I tore it playing basketball. Um, and the first time that I tore it, I knew I had done something in my knee, and I really didn't know what. I knew it didn't feel right. Something wasn't right in there. But I think I was 14 years old when I tore it the first time. And my dad, being a basketball coach, he was somewhat familiar of some of his girl players, having knee injuries. Um, but he didn't want to, I guess, admit that with me right off the bat, because he knew that was kind of a rough injury, and he didn't want to, he didn't want to scare me with anything. But long story short, that it did tear. So I had that repaired, and that was a hard surgery on me, especially being that age and being that athletic and wanting to go all the time. Having to try to slow down and handle that injury was rough. And about 9 months after that, I ended up tearing it again. I was going up for a rebound, and whenever I came down, my right leg got hung on a guy's shoulder. And whenever that kind of got me all off balance, all of my weight came down on that bad knee again, and it blew again. Of course, the second time it blew, I had been there, done that. I knew exactly what had happened. So that came about, like I said, not too long after I'd torn it the first time. So I feel like definitely those injuries kind of, I'm not going to say slowed me down, but they made me aware of injuries and how much they can set you back. So whenever I did get into my weight training and my bodybuilding, I felt like because I had those injuries that I was a little bit smarter with the way that I trained and lifted, so to speak. But yeah, those two injuries definitely set me back a little bit, as far as definitely in my basketball goals that I had, which is kind of the reason that I left basketball and focused all of my energy and my drive on or in the gym.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about once you graduated high school, how did life unfold for you? How did how did life kind of go for you once you graduated? What were your plans? How did that go?
Once I graduated, I was on the college path, so I knew I was wanting to go to college somewhere. Um, I'm a big hunter, big fisherman, so I was leaning towards more something in wildlife. So I kind of had my sights set on a wildlife biology program, which was at the University of Tennessee at Martin, which Martin is a very, very, very small town in West Tennessee, and it's a branch of the University of Tennessee, but it was at the Martin location. So when I graduated high school, that was my plans was to go get a wildlife biology degree. However, whenever I got enrolled into it and they started throwing all of the molecular biologies and the chemistries and all that kind of stuff, I kind of stepped back and said, maybe this isn't for me. Uh, I enjoyed all the wildlife classes and that obviously interested me, but all of the more technical and advanced classes for that type of program probably wasn't so much for me. So I switched to criminal justice. And with that in mind, I was really wanting to be some type of special agent either in the TBI, FBI, Alcoholic Beverage Commission, ATF, something. I didn't necessarily want to be a cop or a police officer, but I wanted to do something where I was out in the field, but not necessarily a cop. But that's the route that I shifted was from wildlife biology to criminal justice. Okay. And I did end up graduating UT Martin with the criminal justice degree. So
now, was this college that you went to, was it pretty close to where you grew up, or how far away was it from kind of your home area?
It was probably roughly 3 hours away. Okay. is about. So I would come home a lot on the weekends. I ended up joining a fraternity down there. Again, it's a small. It was a very small town, but the fraternities were really, really big on intramural sports. So a lot of the fraternities would have 2 or 3 different teams, team 1, team 2, team 3, whatever. And they were really big into playing all the sports. So I dove off into that and played, softball and football and basketball and stuff with all of them. But I always found time to make it. They had a pretty good gym there on campus. And so I always found time to obviously put my time in the gym. But I also, played the sports and everything that I enjoyed as well. But
now, what would you say about your overall college experience? Did you really enjoy it? Do you feel like it was a good time for you maybe to get away from home a little bit, meet some new people, and grow and mature, or not so much?
I enjoyed college. The bad part about it is whenever I graduated high school and I wouldn't say that it's far away, but moving that distance and pretty much living there, I lost touch with a whole lot of my friends that were my high school friends and met college friends. However, whenever I graduated college, you all go kind of your separate ways, and I come back home. I'd lost contact with all of those friends, and now I'm back home with a lot of my high school friends that kind of stuck around that I was out of touch with, and hadn't talked to them in a long time. So I really didn't like that transition going from your good friends that you had in high school and then making new friends in college and then having to leave those friends and go move back home. But as far as the college experience, I really enjoyed it. Again, it was a very small town, small school, which I liked because I am from a small town, so it didn't feel like it was overwhelming. It wasn't like I was the small town country boy that I am going to like this huge university and it feeling overwhelming. I mean, I really enjoyed the college life there.
So, how did you become a firefighter EMT? Because that's a very honorable, career. How did you get into that?
Sure. So I've got a cousin that was a chief in the fire department. And whenever I graduated college, again, I had my sights set on something along the criminal justice path. So I had gotten a couple of interviews with the TBI. Um, However, whenever I'd go into the interviews, they told me that they were hiring internally. They already knew who they were going to hire. So it was just kind of a formality, with me coming in, for the interviews, which was kind of disappointing. But so I did that for a while, trying to land one of those jobs. Then I got hired with the State Department of Education as an investigator for teacher misconduct. So that was kind of interesting. You know, seeing what all the school teachers did that they thought that they could get away with. But anyway, I was in charge of um, whatever kind of misconduct they did. I was in charge of putting a case together, and then I would present that case in front of the state board attorney to decide whether or not we needed to recommend ethics courses for that teacher, suspend the license, or revoke it completely. But I was stuck in an office all day, which I hated. I was on the phone with, you know, the investigating officers. I was on the phone with superintendents, principals, and I just it was a good job for me. It got me kind of some good experience in that field. But I did not like being in an office all day. I wanted to be out and about, in the field doing something. So one Thanksgiving, the my cousin, the one that was the chief on the fire department, we would get together with his side of the family on Thanksgiving. And we were having Thanksgiving dinner one day, and he wanted to know kind of how everything was going. And I told him, I said, buddy, I'm just not happy with, with where I'm at. I'm stuck in this this position that's a good position, but I'm just not happy doing what I'm doing. I want to go somewhere else with it. So he said, well, have you ever thought about the fire department? I said, no, not really. And so we started talking more and more and more about it. And it sounded something that would be great. There's a lot of bad stuff that we see and that we have to do, but we also get to, we get to do a lot of good stuff, a lot of positive stuff. But what I like about it is you never know what's going to happen that day. So every day when I go into work or go on shift, it's something different every day. And it's, I'm out in the field. It's not like I'm doing something just repetitiveness every single day. So, I can't thank him enough for kind of pushing me in that direction and leading me to have that position where I'm at now, because I love it.
And just so everybody that's watching or listening to this knows, you are fresh off a 24-hour shift. Is that correct, Brandon?
That's correct. That's correct. I got off at 6 o'clock this morning, and from midnight to about 5:40 a.m. when my relief man got there, we made about 6 different calls just in that little span there. So we didn't get much sleep, last night at all. But I mean, that's the job, that's part of it. So.
Okay, now I want to take a quick step back to this investigation work that you did in terms of the teachers, and then we're going to start in the direction of bodybuilding talk. But I kind of want to wrap up your professional career talk, and then we'll get into bodybuilding talk. So
Sure.
now with this, and I'm curious because I'm a licensed teacher and I've been a physical education teacher in the past, and looking to kind of get back into that work in the near future. But how does all that come about? Is this something to where you guys just like get a clue from like somebody within the school in terms of like a teacher or administrator, or how does that even work that you would investigate teachers?
So normally what would happen is I told you that my dad was a school teacher. He was a PE teacher, And my mom was also a school teacher, and she had her doctorate degree. So she left the school system and went to work for the State Department. And she was at one time she was the assistant commissioner of education over Tennessee. So with her being involved in that, that's kind of how I ended up getting in with the State Department. Um, that's where my degree kind of pushed me in with that, with where my mom was associated with the State Department. So just so you kind of had an idea on where how that led to that. But both my parents were school teachers growing up. So, but anyway, to answer your question, Quentin. So whenever I would get a file, it was normally a file that the school system had that maybe they had a parent or some of the students or something had made an allegation on that teacher. And then it was kind of up to me, and a lot of times they would have the superintendent or maybe a local police officer or something that would kind of be investigating too. So it was kind of a whole bunch of moving parts. Once we got a file, we knew that not only we were going to be doing some work on our end to find out what was going on, but that there was several other people that were going to be doing kind of some investigations to see if there was anything to this or not. So a lot of times it was, once we would get a file, it was almost like they were just letting us know, hey, these allegations or these remarks have been made on this teacher. We're going to be doing some work on our side. We'd like y'all to do something on your side. And then it was kind of like, once that circle started, that's what started putting together the information on that individual. But I mean, Quentin, it was everything. It would be teachers coming in drunk, or teachers coming in on drugs or selling drugs to the students, or getting in fights with students. I mean, it was, you would be very surprised at some of the stuff that came across my desk, and I was just like, wow, you're supposed to be somebody that these kids look up to. You're supposed to be painting a picture of their life, and like, this is what you're doing. But anyway, so that's kind of how all of that revolves as far as that line of work went.
Okay. Yeah, that's something I don't think I would want to do, just for the simple fact of seeing and hearing about and then investigating what people in a profession like teaching did or are doing. Like I don't think I could handle that. Just like I couldn't handle being a firefighter or EMT. So much respect for you guys in that profession. So okay, Brandon, let's take a hard dive into bodybuilding talk, because that's why everybody's here, right?
Sure.
So you started weight training when you're around 13 for basketball specifically. Why don't you start from that point and walk us through how you kind of got from just lifting weights for sports actually into the sport or the endeavor of bodybuilding? How did that evolve?
Sure. So again, we'll go back to the basketball, because that's where I got it. That's where I got started. So when our coach was requiring us to put, normally he was requiring 2 to 3 days a week in the gym. And at this time, I wasn't driving yet. So I went to the principal, and my dad was the PE teacher at the school. So which kind of helped. So I went to the principal and I said, hey, is there any chance I could get the keys to the gym so that I could come, after hours or whenever, and weight train? And obviously that was okay. I was the PE teacher's son, so he obviously had keys to the gymnasium, which allowed me to come in and practice basketball pretty much anytime I wanted to. But now I had the keys to the gym, so not only could I go and play ball anytime I wanted to, but I could go and weight train anytime I wanted to too. And my dad was great about taking me and dropping me off at the gym, and let me train, and he would meet me in the gymnasium, and he would throw the ball to me and let me shoot whatever I wanted to do. He was great as far as that goes. He spent a whole lot of time with me, and again, I had a great set of parents growing up. But so once I started training more and more, again, I started seeing the results. Other people started making comments on man, Brandon, you're starting to to look good. Your muscles are starting to develop well, and obviously that when you see it and other people notice it, that makes you enjoy it more and maybe want to keep it going. So I did, and I kind of had a started developing a love for kind of seeing what I could do with my body off the basketball court. I found myself, liking to go and training just as much as I did shooting ball or, whatever is was going on in the gym as far as, practicing my dribbling or, my plyometrics again for my vertical jump. But, I ended up being in the gym just as much and enjoying that just as much. But again, I am from a really, really small town. And I started having people commenting, on my physique as far as when I started getting older, my junior and senior year. And whenever we would be out working in the tobacco patch, we would have our, I would have my shirt and stuff off, and a lot of the guys that were working with us, were making comments like, "Man, Brandon, you're, what are you doing? You're looking great, whatever." And I'm just like, "Oh man, I look good for a Cheatham County boy." You know what I mean? I didn't really think anything of it. Um, and then I started going to a local gym that is right up the road. And in the summertime, I was working whenever it wasn't tobacco season. I was working for a plumbing company. So in the summers, I would work for the plumbing company, and as soon as I would get off work at this plumbing company, I would go straight to the gym and train at this gym. It was called First Class Gym, and it was in Jolton, Tennessee, another really, really small town. Again, I'm kind of right in the middle. We get our utilities from a city called Pleasant View, but we have a Jolton address. So I'm really, really close to Pleasant View, Tennessee, and really close to Jolton, Tennessee, but they're really, really small, really, really small towns or cities, whatever you want to call them. But again, that's where I grew up. It's what I'm used to. But so I started training at this gym called First Class Gym, and the owner there, had been to a couple of the local bodybuilding shows, and had talked to me about possibly, competing. And I said, "Johnny, like I look good to be, in Cheatham County. I'm in Jolton, Tennessee. I don't know if I'm really wanting to." Get on stage and compete. I'm kind of happy with where I'm at. So he said, "Well, here's somebody's name I want you to talk to." And he gave me a guy's name that had competed before, and he wanted me to talk to him about, maybe learning some posing and that kind of stuff. And he said, "Just talk to him and see if it's something that you might want to do. And, um, just go from there, because he had been to a couple of shows before, but he hadn't competed. And again, nobody really around my area had ever competed. They, just went to these little small, I think the gym that I was at, of course, I went whenever I got off work, but it was normally about the same 4 or 5 people in there every single evening. It was a small place. So, we were all kind of friends in there, but that's kind of what spiked you know the bodybuilding so-called for me. And then at that time, that was when I started picking up the bodybuilding magazines and reading all of those, which not many people do anymore. It's more social media based stuff rather than the magazines that we were growing up used to. But that's kind of what fueled me into or spiking my interest as far as possibly doing something with bodybuilding.
Okay. So when did you first decide to step on a bodybuilding stage and start flexing those muscles, Brandon?
So whenever I was 19, I take that back. Yeah, I was 19. So I had just graduated college, and no, I was still in college. Yeah. Yeah, I was still in college. I had just graduated high school. I'm sorry. And so at this point, whenever I would come home from college, um, I had my family had some bottom land that I was raising cucumbers and squash in this about it was probably about a 10-acre creek bottom land. So was going to school. Whenever I'd come home from school for the summer, I was raising about 2.5 acres of squash and an acre and a half of cucumbers to, to make some money during the summer. And then I was taking all of that and going and selling it at the farmers market in Nashville.
Okay.
But that was when I was around 18, 19. So again, I was raising squash and cucumbers. And whenever I would get done making my sales for the day, I was, back at the gym. And this was kind of in between the plumbing company and, whenever I would get my stuff harvested or picked, from the field, a lot of times I would go and maybe work the rest of the day at the plumbing company and then head to the gym. But so when I was 19 years old, again, the gym owner got me in contact with this individual who kind of helped me as far as learning some poses and getting on a halfway decent diet, I should say, because at the time, I ate clean, but I didn't eat a bodybuilding diet, I guess you would say. I mean, I was eating, a whole lot of tuna fish and, I was more so just trying to get in high protein. A lot of times whenever I would be in my classes, I would be eating a fish meal or something, and the instructor would have to make me go out of the class because the smell, he said was interrupting the class. So I was having to go out of the class and eat a lot of my meals. But so that was again when I was 19, and I did a show in Tennessee in Chattanooga called the Battle of the River. And that's the show that was a national qualifier. But let's see, I did that one when I was when I was 19, I did the Tennessee State Championship show. Yeah, let me back up. When I was 19, I did the Tennessee State Championship show as a teenager, and I entered into the teenage division. And I ended up, winning that show, the teenage division. And the guys that were competing against me were a whole lot bigger than I was. I think whenever I weighed in, at like 135 pounds. I think was my weight at that show. I was ripped up, but I was a small guy. So whenever I was 19, that was my first, to answer your question, that was my first bodybuilding show, was the Tennessee State Championship when I was 19 years old. Then later I did the Battle of the River show, which was a national qualifying show. And that was my second show. And that was whenever I did the open division. And I was a lightweight. So whenever I did that show, I met Flex Lewis at that show, because at the time Flex was living in Murfreesboro, and Murfreesboro is probably an hour and 15 minutes from me. But whenever I was I'd heard of Flex, but I'd never met him. I didn't really know much about him. I had just heard of him. But again, this was back before, Flex was Flex. And he had just moved from the UK, and Neil Hill was kind of in town with him, and they just happened to be at this show. So whenever I did this show in 2009, that was whenever I did the Battle of the River show. Again, I'm a little older now. And that's where I ended up meeting Flex and meeting Neil. And whenever I did this show, I ended up winning the lightweight division. But Neil ended up approaching me and said, hey, Brandon, like, you've got a really good, pleasing physique. And he said, would you be up for me, working with you and trying to get you to the next level? And again, I'm a small town country boy. So, I never even had dreams of really taking it to another level. Again, I was, it took a whole lot of convincing to even get me to do another bodybuilding show, much less try to pursue it any further than where I was currently. Um, but anyway, started talking to Neil, and he kind of, introduced me a little bit to Flex. So I started driving to Murfreesboro about once every 2 weeks or so, and I would train with Flex. And Brandon Curry was also living in Murfreesboro at the time. Him and Flex Lewis were living in the same apartment complex there. So I ended up meeting Brandon and meeting Flex, and trained about once every 2 weeks there, normally with Flex, but a lot of times Brandon would kind of, he would be around and he would join in on some of the workouts as well. But mainly it was Flex that I was training with, and Neil was kind of helping me out a little bit on my diet and everything. But I feel like that doing that specific show at that point and having those two guys there is really, really, really what pushed me to, I guess, take it to where I am now. I never would have even tried to pursue anything like that without those two guys. Again, I was pretty much just doing these bodybuilding shows because people were in my ear about it all the time. And again, I was just like, man, I look good to be in Cheatham County. Again, I'm just a country boy. I'm not trying to, to make this a profession or do this for a living or something. And I'm like, there's no way I could be, these guys, the guys I'm looking at in the magazines or whatever. But that's definitely what drove and pushed me to keep it going.
Wow. That's it doesn't get much better than Neil Hill and James Flex Lewis as I guess coach mentor type people in the beginning. Now, why don't we get to the point where you're competing on the national level, and when did you turn pro? What show did you turn pro? What did that mean for you when you got your IFBB pro card, Brandon?
Oh man, of course, at the time, I turned pro in 2012, and if you wanted a pro card and you were a man, you got it in bodybuilding. That was the only way to get it. They didn't have all these other classes that they have now, and the only shows at the time that you could get it at were the USA Championships in Vegas, the Nationals, and the North Americans. Those were the only three shows that were doing pro cards. But I'll back up again to 2009, whenever I did that show in Chattanooga, and whenever I met Neil and met Flex, Neil told me about the junior nationals, which was later on that year. He didn't really know when, but he said, you need to look at possibly going to the next level. Like you've got that look. He said, I've been, doing this for a long time. And he was like, I know when I spot the look. And he said, I had that look. Of course, me, I didn't know what he was talking about. I was like, Neil, I'm just you don't know where I'm from. I got to go back and cut tobacco, like this is not me. But anyway, he got me to kind of pursue a national level show. So I get home, I get online, and I'm looking, and I'm talking to my parents, and I said, well, there's another one, the junior nationals in Chicago, and I said, but it's in like 2 weeks. And so I got to reading, and I was already past the deadline to sign up and all this. So I ended up making a phone call and asking them if there was any way that I could do the show. I know it's past the deadline. And I said, but I just did this show, which was a qualifier. And, I told him about Neil, and I said, he would like for me to do this show. So that's why I'm calling. I said, is there any way that you all could let me in? So I had to pay a late fee for signing up at a later date. But they did end up letting me come. And again, this was way out of my comfort zone. Like whenever I got there, I was just kind of like, wow, this place is big. The stage was big. There's a lot of people there, a lot going on. And again, I keep going back to my small town, little bitty gyms. I'm not. This is really, really, really out of my comfort zone or my wheelhouse. But again, with Flex and Neil talking to me and kind of pushing me, I kind of was like, maybe I do need to see what this next level is. So I ended up, signing up, went to the junior nationals in Chicago, and ended up winning the lightweight division at the junior nationals. And again, that completely caught me off guard because I was just going to kind of see what that level was about. I never thought anything about winning my class as a lightweight. However, whenever I got there and was doing my weigh-ins, I saw Sean Ray, and I was talking to my parents. I said, man, this is, they didn't know who this guy was, but I said, man, I've been reading about this guy in magazines, like this guy's, this guy's he's legit, he's great. And he ended up approaching me and, kind of saying that, I had a good look and he was wanting me to show him some poses. And of course, then I was just on top of the moon. I was like, man, like, look, I've got Flex talking to me. I've got Neil, wanting to help coach me. I just ran into Sean Ray, who's told me that I've got, some potential and he likes my look. So whenever I left that show, I felt really, really good. So after that, I looked at doing the USA Championships in Vegas in 2010. So 2010, I did the USA Championships, obviously trying to go for the pro card then, which is what Neil was kind of pushing me to do. So in 2010, I did the USA Championships in Vegas and got fourth. And I think that is the year that Brandon Curry won the overall at that show. I think that's where he turned pro and he got his pro card. Because I remember him winning the overall, and I'm pretty sure it was at that show. But anyway, so I ended up getting fourth. So in 2011 was when I got hired on with the fire department. So that year I kind of had to take off of competing for bodybuilding because I was in my EMT training. I was in all the fire suppression trainings. I had all of that stuff going on that during that year. 2012, I ended up getting back on stage, going back to the USA Championships in Vegas, and I got third at that show. And the guy, obviously the guy that won turned pro, and there was one guy that was ahead of me. His name was Victor Del Campo. He got second place. So he was right on the edge of getting that pro card as well. So the only other show where they were giving pro cards was the Nationals in Atlanta that same year. So I said, well, I'm going to go to this show in Nationals. And I went and talked to some of the judges, and I got some good feedback from the judges. So in 2012, went to Nationals later that year, and Victor Del Campo was there again. And I was like, man, he beat me at USA Championships. So now, I've got to beat him, if I'm wanting to get a pro card. So I ended up beating him at the Nationals that year and turning pro. And I think Victor ended up turning pro maybe the next year after that. But But man, just whenever whenever I got announced at nationals and getting that pro card, I mean, it was one of those things that's kind of like, I did it, like everybody had been telling me, like, why are you pursuing, trying to turn pro? They're like, you're not going to get there, like that's, you have to live in, these bigger cities, and you have to have, all this kind of stuff going on. And like, you're just, you're from Cheatham County, like you're not gonna, this isn't you. So whenever I got that, it was a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. Just I'm sure as it is for anybody that gets a pro card, you chase that for so long, and you put in so much work and so much training and diet, and once you finally get it, it's almost like a degree. Once you've got it, nobody can take it away from you. You've got it. And that sticks with you for the rest of your life. But the what what made me, I guess, enjoy it so much was I had everybody there, whenever I turned pro. A lot of my friends were there, my parents were there. They all took the time to make the trip to Atlanta to watch me, um, and just having a lot of my friends and family there and having a good crew there to see me accomplish that. And again, I never I thought that was going to be it for me. You know, winning that was kind of like my goal. I want to turn pro, and then once I get there, like I'm good. That's what I want. And again, at that time, they weren't giving away near as many pro cards as they are now. I think they gave away maybe like 18 or 19 a year then. So, but whenever I competed at the USA Championships and the Nationals, I was a welterweight. And I think at the Nationals that year, I think there was like 30 something in my class. I mean, it was a big class because, again, that the only shows that you could get a pro card in 2012 were at the North Americans, the USA Championships, and the Nationals in Atlanta. So those three shows were always stacked with good competitors, because that was the only place that you could get a pro card.
Hmm.
So,
When did you step on a pro stage? What was that like? And how many times have you competed as an IFBB pro, Brandon?
well, again, Quentin, whenever I turned pro, I thought that was kind of it for me. I didn't think that I would compete anymore, because I was about 164, 165 pounds, and the next weight class up was obviously 212, and I knew flex, and I knew, there's no way that I could compete with that. Like I just want, and I kept telling Flex, like, Flex, I just want to turn pro. Like I know I'm never going to be at your level. I just want to turn pro. And of course he kept pushing me, to try to take it as far as I could, obviously. But I didn't compete again. So I turned pro in 2012, and then I didn't compete again until 2021.
Oh, wow.
So I took that much time off from the stage, which looking back, I wish I hadn't done. I wish I would have competed a little bit sooner, especially once they started coming out with the classic physique divisions. I wish that I would have competed sooner, but um, a lot of stuff happened, obviously, in my life during those years. I got married, I had kids, and again, I'm from a small town. I know I keep saying that, but it's a whole lot easier, I think, to be in a bigger city,
Mhm.
um, especially with the bodybuilding. Just having the having more avenues that you can go in bigger cities definitely helps as far as being from a little small town. But I mean, I enjoy it here. That's what I'm used to. But again, so 2021 was whenever I decided, hey, like I turned pro, but I'm not using it, and my wife was like, what? because my wife knows my personality and my thinking. She was like, if you compete again, she was like, when's it going to stop? Like when are you going to be satisfied? Because I kept telling her, I was dating her at the time that I turned pro, and whenever I turned pro, she was kind of like, it's over. Like he's good now. This is it. Um, but again, she knows my personality and the drive that I have and the competitive nature that I have. And so whenever I told her that I'd like to compete again, I was explaining it to her. I was like, it's like getting drafted into the NBA and never playing. Like I don't want to look back and say like, man, I got that pro card, but I never used it. I never tried to do anything with it. And I said, just let me try, see what happens. And I said, if I don't do well, then I'll hang it up. Like I'll be done. But I ended up doing the Texas Pro, and again, first time I'd been on a pro stage in what 9 years. First time I competed in 9 years, and then I did Classic, which was also a little bit different. Still a lot of the same poses, but a little different than the bodybuilding poses that I was used to. Um, and in that time, I obviously kept my weight training. I never stopped. Um, I enjoyed lifting. I enjoy training, and it's a lifestyle for me. Just like it has to be for pretty much anybody that enjoys it that much or takes it to that level. I mean, it has to be a lifestyle for you. Um, but whenever I finally decided to to do the pro show, I decided on doing the Texas Pro, and then there was another show that was in Tennessee that was the very first pro show Tennessee. It was the very first pro show Tennessee had ever had, and that was why I wanted to do that one. But I wanted to do this one first. So whenever I did the Texas Pro, again, I was up on stage with Logan Franklin. I was on stage with Mr. Classic Physique, and these guys are you know, to me, they were night and day ahead of me. They were so much taller than I was. Here I am at like 5'4", and I'm competing against these guys that are 6'2", 6'3", and they're just, they're dwarfing me, I feel like. And of course, I'm on stage standing next to them. There's a couple of shots with me, hitting some back poses, standing next to Logan Franklin. And, I mean, I look so much smaller than him, which I am. But I ended up getting fourth at that show, and a lot of the judges, gave me some really really good feedback and said like, hey, you've got some potential. Like, we'd like to see you at another show. They said you've there's several Mr. Olympia competitors on this stage, and she said, or they said that you've hung with them pretty good, so we'd like to see you do another show. So I told them about the Tennessee show, which was in my hometown, and they said, yeah, that would be a really good show for you. So I set my sights on that one, and ended up getting second at that show. So if I would have won that one, I'd obviously been in the Olympia last year, but I got second. So I'm still waiting my turn, I guess you'd say. I'm not wanting to give it up. I mean, I'm so close. I'm wanting to keep it going. And again, this is something that I never expected to be at. I lift weights and train and do all this because I enjoy it. I never thought that I would be at the level that I'm at, or that I would be speaking to you, right here, right now about this stuff. It's just it's a lot to think about, kind of like how far I've come and what's happened in my life, but I've been blessed.
So I guess this round your wife lost this round, huh, Brandon? She lost out on this one since you did so well.
Yeah, she did. She did. But
Oh. Okay, so Brandon, you competed for the first time in 2021. what are your plans then kind of going forward to step back on a stage?
Well, I've just spoken with Neil earlier this week, and we're going to try to get on a decent off-season program. Right now, we're trying to decide if I'm going to stay in classic or if I'm going to try to go up to 212. I'm right on the line with my height for the classic. I'm not going to say struggled, but I was right at the very tip top of my weight at for classic. So if being in the gym, you're always trying to make improvements and trying to add. And I feel like if I make any improvements at all, it's going to put me over that limit, which I really wish that the IFBB would do something with splitting the classic physique guys into two separate categories. Maybe do like a 5'10" and over and a 5'9" and under or something like that, because it's to me, it's a real disadvantage for the smaller guys like me, who I can weigh, 175 pounds at 5'4" and have to compete against, guys that are, the Bumsteads and the Logan Franklins and the Mr. Classic physiques who are 6'2", 6'3", that can weigh 240, it's really, really hard. And it's pushing a lot of the good guys out of classic and kind of pushing them into 212 because they see that they can't beat, those taller, taller guys that can put on muscle too. There's several of the really good classic guys that have left and gone to 212 for that reason. But I don't know if that's something that they would ever try to do or try to implement. But I definitely think that it would be helpful, for sure. In bodybuilding, they ended up splitting it and adding in the 202, which they later added to 212. But I feel like that there's just as many competitors in classic physique now, if not more, than bodybuilding. They split bodybuilding, so I don't know why they haven't split classic. But anyway, Quentin, going forward, again, I just talked to Neil earlier this week, and we're going to try to get on a good off season, a good lean bulk program, and just kind of see where my body goes. I'm thinking that I'm probably, the next time I'm on stage is probably going to be in the 212 division. It's not going to be anywhere close to 212. I mean, if I had to guess, I'm probably going to be on stage, in the 180s. But Sean Clarita has shown everybody that you don't have to be, you don't have to be up there, in the higher 212s, around 205 to 212 in order to compete with these guys. So he's definitely kind of shown me that, hey, you don't have to bring a 210 or a 205 pound package to the 212 stage. If you bring a good quality, good quality muscle package, you can still walk away with it. So that's where we're at. Probably going to be 212. But again, we really won't know until the off season, kind of does its thing and see where I'm at. And I'm heavier now than I've ever been. So I'm thinking that that's probably going to be pushing me into the 212 category over the classic physique. And I've had another I had another baby last year, so that kind of put a pause on competing in 22. I told you I was on stage in 21, but had a new baby in 22, and then ended up buying two gyms in 22 as well. So I told you I was right in between the two small towns. So I've got a gym now called Prime Fitness in Jolton, and then I've got a gym called No Limit Fitness in Pleasant View, which are the two towns that pretty much I've grown up in. So last year was a really busy year for me, which is why I felt like I had to take that year off. But I'm not done yet.
Okay, cool. Okay, I want to finish up, Brandon, with a little training talk. So obviously, the thread throughout your entire story is, whatever's going on in your life, whether you're competing or not, you're still training, right? So what has your training kind of looked like over the years, and how do you kind of train in the gym currently?
So again, my training over the years with coming off of my knee injury, that has kind of made me want to train a little bit smarter, more so than I feel like a lot of people, especially the younger generation, coming in, a lot of them just want to throw a whole lot of big weight around, which has its place. But I think moving the weight consistently and moving it in a manner where you can concentrate on squeezing the muscle and rather than just moving the weight up. Um, I am strong for my size. You've probably seen some of the videos and stuff online. I mean, I am a strong bodybuilder, but I normally don't do it if I can't get it for about 6 to 8 reps. I'm not going to do it. It's too heavy, and injuries aren't worth trying to move that. I'm not a power lifter, so the injuries aren't worth trying to move that big weight. Um, so the training, I do like to move heavyweight, but again, it's something that I can manage for 6 to 8 reps. Um, and then Neil has a kind of a strict training regimen, his Y3T program that he likes, for his clients to follow. And I do that a lot too, but I also do a lot of my own thing because it's gotten me to where I am. It's worked for me over the years. So I kind of continue to implement that along with his style. And both of those styles of training for me seem to do really well. And then with me owning both the gyms now, um, it sometimes it's hard to be in the gym and not be the business owner of the gym, actually get in there and do my workout. Which before it was kind of like I would go to the gym and I'm just another person in the gym. I can go in there and train, put my headphones on, do my thing. But now a lot of times when I'm in the gym, people will have questions about a membership, or something will have to be cleaned, or a machine's down or broken. So that that's taken a little bit of getting used to for me. But I mean, I'm still finding the time to get my workouts in. A lot of times I'll put my headphones in, and if somebody has something for me to do, I'll tell them to shoot me a text or whatever. I'll finish my workout and then I'll handle it.
Um, I know exactly what you mean, because I for the last 3 years I've owned a gym, and I don't train at the gym that I own for exactly the reasons that you mentioned, right? Like, training for me is my time, and it's it's meditative for me. And so after I bought the gym, and I'm also in my hometown with the gym that I grew up training at, people want to come up and talk to you. People just don't get quote unquote training. Most people in small towns at this gym, probably at your gyms too, they're there to kind of socialize, they're there to kind of work out, right? They're not there to train like a bodybuilder. So I definitely get that. Now, kind of in closing here, Brandon, what is your training split currently, and has that changed over the years or not?
So it changed whenever I got hired on with the fire department, because our schedule with the fire department is 24 on, 48 off. So I had to obviously split my workouts to accommodate that schedule. We do have little gyms at the fire halls, but they're not gyms where I could get a beneficial workout at. So my split now is I'd like to train one muscle group a day, other than arms. I'll pair bis and tris together as one day, and I will rotate hamstrings and quads. So I'll run with pairing hamstrings and quads for about 6 to 8 weeks. And then I'll pull it back and I'll separate those out. I'll do hamstrings and calves, and then I'll have a quad focus day. Every other muscle group I like to train by itself. But so my split will be train 2 days, off a day because that's the day that I'm at the fire hall. And normally on those days, I'm up longer hours and I'm up more hours. So a lot of times those days will be my refeed days. So I would normally get in 1 or 2 more meals on those days. And over the years, it's done really well for me, being on that training schedule.
Awesome. Okay, Brandon, I think that's a great place to end it, man. We've had a pretty long, thorough conversation. We really got into your story. So before I do a quick outro and I do let you go for the day, I want to kind of give you the platform to share where people can connect with you, if it's on Instagram or any other social media platforms. And then also, if you have any final thoughts, any final words, any shout outs, I'm going to turn it over to you. And then once you're done, I'll do a quick outro and I'll let you go. So whatever you got for us in closing, make sure you give us your Instagram, please.
I got you. I'm not near as active on social media as I probably should. Again, I know I keep reverting back to being the small town country boy, but that's really what I am. I'm not one to necessarily say flaunt, or brag, or and I feel a lot of times that's what social media is. It's a place where people can brag and flaunt their stuff, and they want to get likes and they want to get feedback, and that's just that's not me. I mean, I put my pants on just like anybody else does. I put my socks on, I put my pants on, I put my shoes on, I go to work, just like anybody else does. So I don't like to try to perceive myself as necessarily being better than anybody else. I've been blessed with good genetics for bodybuilding. I am small, which those genetics aren't great, but as far as the genetics for my muscle bellies, my symmetry, I was blessed with as far as how I'm put together that way. Um, and Neil does get on to me a lot of times for not being more active on social media, but it's so hard to change my perspective of that, because again, I'm not one to feel like that I'm wanting to brag and flaunt, and a lot of times, especially nowadays, I feel like that a lot of this younger crowd is coming in to the gyms and they're more worried about getting good social media footage or getting good pictures to put on social media than they are worried about getting in the gym and doing the work. So I don't know if that's considering me old school, but I guess if it is, then that's what it is. I hate to think that I'm that old to where I would be called old school, but that's how I am. I don't have any supplement sponsorships. I'm not. I was at one time with ABB and Optimum Nutrition, but I haven't been with them for a while, and I haven't really pursued any type of sponsorships. Again, I do this because I enjoy it. I'm not trying to make it on the social media platform necessarily. I like throwing up videos and stuff every once in a while, but I'm not trying to again act like that I'm better than anybody else. This is a hard world that we live in now, for sure. And I mean, I'm just trying to do the best that I can do with being a dad, being a good husband, trying to raise my kids right, trying to be a business owner, trying to be a good firefighter and go to work and still try to keep up my bodybuilding interest as well. So I've got a whole lot of stuff going on in my life, but so does everybody else. Everybody's got a lot of stuff going on. So again, I want to apologize to anybody that's watching this or anybody that does watch this about me not being more active on social media. I know a lot of people have reached out saying they wish that I would do more, and I probably should. But again, that's really just not my personality. I'm trying to do better. And with doing this with you, it's even out of my comfort zone. I don't do a whole lot of these. but I have enjoyed it, and I appreciate you reaching out and having me on, and I appreciate anybody else that watches it, and anybody that has any questions for me. If you wanted to shoot me a message or something on Facebook or Instagram, I'm more than happy to help you out if I can. Again, this is a selfish, very selfish sport, because nobody can hand you a good physique. It has to be earned. You've got to put the work in yourself. You know, your mom and daddy's money isn't gonna give you a good physique if you know that's what you're coming from. If you're coming from, you know, a good line, from family money, but yeah, this is a very selfish sport, and a lot of people kind of take it that way. But I try to help when I can, and again, I'm not one to really flaunt my stuff, I guess I would say. But I do appreciate you having me on.
Mhm.
I've enjoyed it.
And what is your Instagram, Brandon, for anybody that does want to connect with you on that side?
So on Facebook, I'm on there as IFBB Pro, or Brandon Williams IFBB Pro, and then I just changed my Instagram recently. Let me pull that up real quick and
Yep.
see what it's IFBB _ Brandon _ Williams.
Perfect. And then if anybody's down in your neck of the woods in Tennessee, why don't you give us the name of the gyms that you own and the towns that they're in, because you just never know where people are going to be listening or traveling throughout the summer.
Sure. It's so the first one that I have is in Jolton, Tennessee, and it's called Prime Fitness. And the other one that I have, I'm in partners with another person on it, so we're 50-50 partners, and it's called No Limit Fitness. It's in Pleasant View, Tennessee. But they're both right off of I-24, which runs through Nashville and runs through Tennessee. And they're both about 30 to 35 miles northwest of Nashville on Interstate 24, right off the interstate.
Awesome. Thank you again, Brandon, for coming on to the podcast and sharing your story. Really appreciate it. Okay.
Absolutely, Quentin. I appreciate you, buddy. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. All of you who are tuning into another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, I just want to say thank you so very much. If you guys have not done so already, make sure you please hit that subscribe button on YouTube in regards to Behind the Muscle podcast. And then also please take this episode with Brandon. Make sure you share it on your Instagram stories. Please tag Brandon, tag Behind the Muscle podcast, so that we know that you listened specifically to this episode and found great value in it, in which I know you did. And then, per the usual, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. Catch you guys later.